welcome back. Here we are in chapter 5, just revisiting a little bit about the spleen. So we mentioned that spleen is part of the middle jiao, the middle section of the body. We talked about it governing transportation and transformation of fluids, food. Basically, it helps move water around the body. TCM talks about patients having a poor appetite. In reality, China went through a period of gross malnutrition, and it was quite common for women to suffer from amenorrhea. That means a lack of periods, a lack of menstrual flow. When the appetite started to improve, then this was a sign that the body was fostering a sense of recovery. Also, the spleen is obviously heavily tied in with its yang component, the stomach. The stomach having a descending function, and the spleen having an ascending function. So it's this idea of, like, tied into the concepts of the what we know as the pancreas, is this function of sending energy outwards and upwards towards the lungs to meet the lungs. So the energy of the food being transported to meet the energy of oxygen, giving us a combustion of energy in the body. Generally, when we think about the spleen, we think about the fact that if there's a deficiency of energy in TCM, there is what we call a yang deficiency, and one of the classic sort of diagnoses is called spleen yang qi deficiency. When it reaches its height of difficulty in terms of diminishing the yang, we get prolapse. So we get the classic is hemorrhoids, prolapse of the uterus, prolapse of any of the organs of the body. What sort of fascinates me about this is that the spleen also has this extra function, in that it deals with the vascularization of the nerves, the vascularization. So it's about bleeding, leaking. So when we have people who bruise easily, we say in TCM that the spleen qi is weak. It controls the blood actually inside. It keeps the blood moving in the organs. Helps to keep the blood in the vessels. What we have to be aware of is when we start seeing bloody stools or uterine bleeding. We have to be very aware that there could be some kind of deeper vascular damage. The spleen also is heavily involved in the four limbs. So tiredness, weakness of the four limbs, particularly like the calf muscles, edema, swelling in the lower legs. You can be guaranteed that the spleen is involved. The spleen also opens to the mouth, so look at the state of the lips. Are the lips dry? Are they lustrous and full? Are they pale? Are they purple? It gives you an indication as to what is going on with the spleen. In my training, the spleen was heavily involved in postnatal depression, because in a lot of times a difficult delivery can lead to a loss of a lot of blood from the mother, leading to a depression through a physical weakness. The baby's taking all the blood. The pregnancy and the delivery has caused a shock, loss of the placenta, a forced sort of prolapse. Another side effect of poor spleen qi is morning sickness. It's a sign of a strong pregnancy, but it's also a sign that the baby is pulling on the effectiveness of the stomach, and therefore the ascending action of the spleen is coming into play, affecting both the stomach and also the liver. I think it's very important to treat the spleen indirectly during pregnancy. It helps to reduce conception issues, and also helps with the birth of the child later on. One of the most important things for the spleen in Chinese medicine is congee, is their version of porridge. It's kind of a rice porridge that they have in the morning, usually made with water. It's full of digestive enzymes, and it gives a slow release of what we call sweet energy, and the spleen likes sweet energy. And we don't mean sweet as in we know it in the West, refined sugar. It generally has a sweet flavour, or a pungent sweet flavour, but it's not an excessive sweetness. So there's a slow release of energy, or as we call it in the West, a low glycemic index. A very good way of gauging the strength of the spleen is how is your sense of taste? How is your sense of smell? Do you enjoy eating? Do you predominantly eat cooked food, or do you enjoy raw food in equal amounts? The sense of taste can often tell you how heavily the spleen has been affected. And we know in the West that we've got to a point where nearly all our food has additives, refined sugars, refined salts, leaving us with a deficient spleen. Hence, we now all suffer in the West with some level of spleen Qi deficiency.